Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is January 26, 2024. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. Also want to thank Pacifica Radio, KPFK, for playing Robert Morgan Fisher on the radio. and me realizing I've got to interview this guy. This is part two. And Robert Morgan Fisher, it is an honor and a pleasure. Where in the heck are you calling in from?
Woodland Hills, California.
You know, in part one, it came up twice, the Ram Dass line, "Be here now." And I'm really fond of that. I think Wyndham Lewis nailed it. He said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So it's like, this question is about archiving, and we're doing a research project on it. And I'm going to set it up a little, but the basic question is archiving more innate or more invented? And do you have any specific plans for your own archive? Because the word archive comes from 1400s. It means to keep safe, free from harm. 200 years later, it became what we normally know archives are, as a record preserved as evidence.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the Egyptians would save stuff in their coffin with them. And then the futurists come along and say, no, destroy all museums and libraries, which I think is a bold artistic statement, but I live half my life in a library. And, you know, the word archive also comes from the word archon, meaning public building, first ruler, chief magistrate. But the phenomenon is, with Ram Dass, we learned that the point of life is to live in the moment. And so why would we want to save stuff if we're going to live in the moment and move forward? So your thoughts, Robert, why do we have tendency to archive? And especially when you repeated my favorite phrase twice, "Be here now."
Well, I think it's inescapable that we draw on our past experience and history. That, in many ways, that makes us who we are. And you really nailed it when you say that artists are writing the future, but the tools that they're using and the materials are drawn from their life experience. It can't be any other way. And so the problems arise when we start living in the past. You know, this idea of nostalgia. I think we might have talked about this last time. The Russian woman, I forget her name, she wrote a wonderful book about nostalgia. Basically, two types of nostalgia: restorative and reflective. Reflective is what the artist uses to reflect and to change around and process and create something new. Restorative is to just cling to the past and relive old grievances and work with retribution. And maybe that's ringing a bell right now. So that's the big difference. Why do we do that? Well, it's because we long for convenience. Right? We long for convenience. It's one of our. I really believe it's one of our most fundamental instincts is the quest for convenience.
Yeah.
And in order to function in the world and to be creative, you have to get up off your ass, and you have to. It takes hard work to be informed, and especially now, I have empathy for people who it's just too much for them, but you have to put in the work, and it has its rewards, especially if you think critically. But it's almost responsibility now, especially in this year.
That is heavy. You just laid out the outline for like 3 questions, Robert. You're really brilliant. I said you're a brilliant wordsmith about 8 times, and you are. And it is amazing because I think it's a reflection of how you were raised, reading your mom and that sense of the importance of books. And, Mallarmé says everything ends up in a book in the long run. It's like, I'm a dumpster diver. I dumpster dove Emerson's prayer book. It's over 100 years old. It was in mint condition. Am I going to dumpster dive a thumb drive and it's going to have, Robert Morgan Fisher's the entire catalog of everything he wrote? How am I going to play it? Look, it's amazing. But let's go with the work ethic first. Where'd you get your work ethic? Because you have a work ethic. You're saying, these other people maybe have lost hope in the work ethic, or they have never learned that. I'm curious, where'd you get your work ethic?
Well, it's emulative. You go after the people that you really admire, and then you start to do some detective work, and you find out, what was driving them, and also what pitfalls did they avoid or fall into, and traps,
Yeah,
and so um, work your work ethic and your rituals are all wrapped up in your boundaries, and you have to decide what your boundaries are.
yeah,
And for me, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. every morning, I'm drinking coffee and reading
yeah,
with minimal intrusion from the device, my phone, um, except to look something up or answer an urgent
yeah,
thing. But I keep the conversation to a minimum. That's one of my rituals, you know. So it begins with your work ethic, and also you have to set goals,
yeah.
And some people set a word count goal, and we can get really really obsessed with word count. If you come up with, it's really more about quality than quantity.
Yeah,
You know, however, if you have a good, I've often said if I can, I get up and I work early in the morning when I can, because if you can crank out 5 pages of new stuff, nothing can touch you the rest of the day.
it's amazing. Yeah. We got to go back to archive. I forgot to ask you, do you have plans for your own personal archives? Do you have a university or some sort of place? You just are asking your family, take care of my boxes of stuff when I die, or any plan for your own personal archive?
No, part of the problem is that I still don't have a book in print. I'm published all the time. I have a new story coming out in the Syncopation Journal on the 1st of February, and it's so my stuff is out there. I have a website that I keep pretty
Beautiful
you
website. Yeah.
thank you. I keep it. Russ Paris is my webmaster, and he has long past wanting to just spend time with his grandkids. But I keep sending him a retainer every year because I said I just really need
Yeah.
you. I'll keep it simple, Russ.
Yeah.
But Russ, if you're watching this, thank you. You're my angel.
But
And
Robert, in that regard, just right off the bat, what if they
sure.
turn the internet off?
Uh,
It's stored on hard drives. Do you know this thing about archives? One of the head archive people in LA said you have to test a hard drive every year and you have to replace it every 10 years. What?
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and you got your book, you put it on the shelf, you hope the place don't burn down and there that copy of the book lives.
yeah.
But
I don't really worry about that. It's
yeah,
beyond my control. I'm
yeah,
doing the best I can to just kind of get my stuff out there, and I'm
yeah,
grateful for the interwebs.
yeah,
Doing that in the print journals, the small presses, that publish my stuff. My music is, I've got 3 solid albums that I'm very happy with, and many co-writes with other artists. Um, so between those two, they say, if something gets broadcast on radio, it goes out into the universe forever and ever. And this short story that I have coming out in the Syncopation Journal is exactly all about that.
yeah.
It's a flash fiction, and it's called Gravitational Pull.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
yeah.
Well, that's grounded in back to work ethic now for a second is I
Mhm.
love Wikipedia about the third paragraph down on work ethic. It says, this could be a scam from consumer culture capitalism. That, usually people say, where'd you get your work ethic? They go, my parents. And so, it's like, is it hardwired in us? Is it something we learned, or it's both, the combination? We know. Harold Bloom said, you try to absorb your influences, then you abandon them. So, you have, how is that accomplished? It
Mhm.
sounds
Yeah.
so good. But, how do you not become, like you brought up Loudon Wainwright, what a great songwriter, lyricist. And I think it was a song he wrote about the word like we were talking about. How do you
Yeah.
absorb Jim Croce, Harry Chapin, Loudon Wainwright, and then abandon them?
Um, well, some of them I don't abandon ever. I kind of have eidetic skills. I wouldn't say I have a photographic memory because sometimes I have brain farts like everybody else. But there's probably a good time to bring up my father. Since the last time we spoke, he passed away at the age of 90 at the end of November. And it was not unexpected, but he was old and wheelchair bound, and he really instilled a. He would always tell me, make things happen. That was one of his favorite phrases. Make things happen, and that's part of his military, training. Um, but he, from a very early age, he would plant ideas in my head, introduce me to my favorite songwriters. He'd bring home like Tom Waits' Small Change and said, "You got to hear this guy," right?
Wow.
And that's really something for a guy who was a naval flight officer and just has had 4 bronze stars and the Air Meritorious Medal, and about 5 years older than his peers, but very wise and really into the poetry of the thing.
Wow.
I remember he said he just once kind of said, I had written some kind of story, and he goes, you could write short stories. He was the first person that said that, and he said, if you were to get like a short story published in Playboy or something, that'd be pretty cool for a high school guy. And
Wow.
he just kind of said, you know, that's attainable. And why not?
You
Right?
gotta have someone tell you this is realistic when it's pipe dream, because if you don't have dreams, your dreams don't come true. What a dad,
Yeah.
man. What an amazing human.
Yeah, he was. I got to tell you, I was very fortunate, Gary, because I was very current with him. He had all his marbles at the end, even though he was in memory care, because that's where my mom got dementia, and he was wheelchair bound, so he was kind of stuck there for like 5, 6, 7 years. And I would video call him twice a week, and they'd be like these 90-minute calls. And
Wow.
it all started with music. I would play like a half hour of his favorite songs. Um, he loved when I try new stuff out on him, and he's pretty open. I mean, when I was real young, he was a little intolerant of because he wanted success from me, and so he would kind of micromanage. He would say, no, nobody's interested in a song about that. And he was not always right. And we'd laugh about it later. But like, I like to push the envelope and do really weird covers. And so, I have a cover version of the B-52's Private Idaho,
Really?
that,
Wow.
that I'll play for any party, any show. I'll just work it right in. And I love them. I think they're folk music.
Oh
I
yeah.
really do. The simplicity and the purity of the B-52s is, and their humor. I think they're a very important American musical
Oh, very
aggregation.
important. But I interject two little quick stories. The first person they wanted to produce their first album was Frank Zappa, and Eno always got the bands that it didn't work out with Frank, Devo and B-52s, and it would have been wow, what an idea that they wanted that because the two women are like Nina Rhoda backup singers. They're
Yeah,
amazing. And at USC, I saw them do a show a couple years ago where they talked and then they did a set of music. It was not because the kids liked it, because the kids were bringing their parents to college and they were like, well, we'll get a band that the parents like. and
yeah,
this is what I learned because they were really good.
yeah,
That Fred, his whole career, Fred, the lead singer, this is his career. Hey, that's it. That's it. They were doing all this stuff, and I mean, folk music is really what it's just beautiful. You brought them up, yeah.
it's like folk pop or something.
Folk
You know,
pop,
I in one of my jobs before I became a writer, I was an assistant to a couple managers, and one of them was I worked for Elvira,
oh,
Cassandra,
really?
Cassandra Peterson, for a couple years,
Yeah,
and she remains a friend, uh, and she was she's always been very, very active in PETA.
yeah,
And so there would be all these rock and roll people that would call her all the time, Chrissy
yeah,
Hind,
yeah,
and uh, and I remember when Fred Schneider called, I just recognized him immediately.
yeah.
You
Oh
know,
God.
hi, this is Fred. You know, and oh, Fred, I
He
love
goes,
you.
hey,
Well, thank you. I love you too. Right? He's just like, and but he was anyway. He's
yeah,
really something that's really cool information that they had their eyes set on Zappa.
to
There's a
produce.
connection. There's a connection between the art world and rock that Zappa and Don Van Vliet and Terry Allen,
Terry
David
Allen, huge, yeah,
David Byrne. These
yeah,
people are all in this really interesting,
yeah,
you know, music and art installation, painting, sculpture, all that stuff. And I've been lucky to know like some of those people,
yeah,
uh, and I just I love it. You
yeah.
know,
Hey, Pete
um,
Townsend learned how to destroy his guitar from a performance artist, and it's like, what? Okay, but let's go
oh
back
well, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah. But I just want to say one more thing. That so many of those British rockers started out in art school.
art school. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. A lot of them. Okay, so Robert, let's go back to your dad. How do you explain his longevity? Is it more lifestyle choice or more DNA? Just is it 50-50, or do you lean a little more either way?
He I think it's both lifestyle and DNA. He liked uh, his cocktails, right? And but he walked a lot when he wasn't wheelchair bound, when his vertebrae didn't fuse. See, he punched out of a jet during Vietnam, and he
Yeah.
got a vertebrae fracture that fused later in life. So, but I think it's DNA,
Yeah.
longevity.
Wait, you
He
think
just
it's a little more DNA or a little more lifestyle choice?
DNA
Is
with
it
him.
really? Yeah.
Yeah, well, his last few years weren't very fun because of the pain he was in, and we had this 90th birthday party for him last May, a family reunion. We all went
Yeah.
up to Washington State, Anacortes on Fidalgo Island. It was really memorable, and then during the summer, he just started to slip away, and we put him in. I mean, he stopped eating. That's always a big sign, and
Yeah.
he just says, "I'm ready to go." He says, "I'm ready to go. It's okay,"
Yeah.
and they will put him in hospice so he could have a little more first class care, and
Yeah.
and then um, and then he got COVID,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, and for the second time, and this time it really impacted him. And my sister was supposed to have a Thanksgiving with her family up there, kind of an ad hoc COVID Thanksgiving, and they called her and said, "Get up here now," like a week before Thanksgiving. And
Right.
she went up there, and then she facilitated, video calls. while he could still respond and react and so forth. And then, then he just he took his time going. And I said, that's because he just loved this world so much.
That's it.
You
Touching.
know, he loved his life. He loved us. And when he left, we all kind of felt like, okay, you know, so long, War Dog. That was his nickname, War Dog.
War Dog. God, you've got ESP major. The other thing I'm researching is simple and question. Can art stop war? Now, of course, it's like that. The basic question is, Robert, are humans hardwired for, and I'm not sure which word to use. I'm doing this workshop at a film festival, and I'm consulting you. Are we hardwired, should I say, for violence, for killing, or for war? I mean, are we hardwired for that, or are we hardwired for cooperation and peace? Most people say we're hardwired for violence or survival, blah, blah, blah. But Maria Kongutis, right at UCLA, archaeologist, anthropologist, kind of proved in her studies that there were cultures that had no warfare. But the first question is, which word should I use? Are we hardwired for killing, violence, or war in a general setting to stimulate a discussion?
It's not violence. Violence is a secondary impulse to fear.
Yes.
And that's what we're hardwired for. And yes, art can make a difference. It can make a huge difference. Because art has the ability to delight, relax, and disarm people and ratchet down the fear. Can it just make war go away? Well, it had quite an impact during the 60s. And then, Václav Havel, in Czechoslovakia. And I'm a proud Czech. My mother was Czechoslovakian. And he revered the Beatles and art. And yeah, I think it can be definitely a unifier and have a calming effect. Right now, everything is all about fear. All the authoritarianism right now thrives on generating fear and uncertainty and anarchy. So this is the big. Are we going to if we succumb to fear. If we win with art, right? Definitely, but just also empathy. You can't be well, you can, but effective art is often all about empathy.
Yeah. Really key word. Let me interrupt for a second because just again, you told me that really well. Don't use the word violence. Right now, it's called "Can Art Stop War?" Should I keep that, or should I say "Can Art Stop Killing"? Should I use the word war?
I think so. Can art stop killing? Because it isn't just about Ukraine and Gaza. Although it's certainly just those are horrific, but the killing is happening right here on our streets.
Exactly. And then bringing up Havel, Havel and Zappa really connected. Did you know that they had these meetings together?
Yeah, I read that.
And then I'm Czech too, so I didn't even know that. My parents are half Polish, half Czech. And Miroslav Vitus, the first bass player for Weather Report, had the best line. He said, "They call me Bounce because I'm one bad Czech."
Nice.
Isn't that a great line for us Czechs?
Very much. Well, the Czechs have a history of not taking any shit. They are very, when the Russians came in 68, the Czechs were like, no, you may have tanks and stuff, but you're never gonna, you're not gonna change us, right? And they did it basically peacefully, so it's like peaceful, protest. And anyway, it's interesting. Listen, all that stuff. I mean, I look at that kind of national pride. I am very wary of any kind of nationalism, You know,
That's
you know,
wild.
people,
Yeah.
when people say, I mean, I say that I'm a proud Czech, but I mean, that's just one aspect of my personality,
Yeah.
and the Czechs are far from perfect. I
Yeah.
mean, we're all just humans,
That's
right?
it. That's
But
it. Amazing. Yeah. We don't
yeah, I
even
mean,
want to.
Czechoslovakia gave us Kafka.
Yeah. That's it.
You know,
Joyce in Finnegan's Wake says, love thy label as thyself. And that's a poke. That's sort of like, do we really need names and labels?
yeah.
Well, we're sharing this commonality called humanness. Okay, so Robert,
Well,
what's the
I want to talk about that for a second.
please go.
The love thy label thing. I might have heard that, but it seems so fresh to me, and it's also it's so wise because we do people, because if they long for convenience, they slap labels on people, and the best way to to not succumb to any label that you don't like is to just say, well, okay, I guess this is fair, right? I am a hypocrite, or I am whatever. Something, certain politicians that are conservative would like never do. They get all upset, right? You know, but when you do that, when you just say, oh, okay, well, I'll entertain that, guilty as charged, you know,
Yeah,
when people people criticize you and you just kind of do that, then it's that old like martial arts thing, where you use their energy to just kind
that's
of deflect.
amazing. You brought that up. Jujitsu, martial arts. That is amazing. You got such a stream of consciousness through line through all this. Because I always say I'm a hypocrite, you know, and I know I
I've
know I
never I've never heard that. I love that. I love
yeah,
that
I'm a
word.
hypocrite and I know it. And
Hypocrite.
it's like uh what you said was back to Fred in the B-52s, instead of going Robert the whole time, I could just go, hey.
Yeah, yeah.
But we think we need our names. What's the difference between responsibility and right?
Wow. Well, what definition of right do you mean? You mean like correct, or like your civil rights?
Yeah, more like civil rights, I think. It's is it your responsibility or your right? What's the difference?
Wow. Okay. Um, Responsibility. When you use the word responsibility, it is usually tethered to something. And if we're talking about in politics, for example, responsibility to me is tethered to the rule of law in our Constitution. And so the rights spring from that, right? And when people start messing with the Constitution, or misinterpreting it or skewing it, to their own for their own purposes and stuff, then that really kind of upsets the equation.
So great, you brought up laws. Utah Phillips, great folk singing um, labor activist, said anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people.
Mm,
Who's entitled to make the rules? Who's entitled to make the laws?
right. Well, we make our own laws, don't we? Or listen to our own little being. By the way, Utah Phillips, I'm such a fan, and
Yes.
one of the proudest moments I had was when Daryl Purpose played a song in a circle or at a gig, I think, where Utah Phillips was there, either on stage. I think he was on stage with Daryl, and the song that we co-wrote, um, Utah Phillips said, "That's the best song I've ever heard."
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa, the man who walked on the moon likes my walk.
It's like better than moose curd pie. I mean, it's sad that that's what he known through Dr. Demento, because the
Yeah.
greatest thing. What's that woman who produced him at the end of his life? From Buffalo. Now I can't think of her name. The great folk singer. She produced 2 acts. She became huge. She produced 2 acts. Maceo from James Brown and Utah Phillips. I says, girl, you got it going on. You know who to give the money to once you make it big.
Yeah. Who is
So
that girl? That woman? I
I know
know
I
who you're talking about.
she's she's from Buffalo, New York. She went back and employed her old town for a record company, and she's still going strong. Anyways,
Oh,
let's.
was it Annie DeFranco?
It's Annie DeFranco. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
How cool is that? You become huge, and then who do you go back and pay back to your heroes? Like they're struggling, and you. Okay, so is perception reality?
No. No, no, not at all. No, our the tools of our perception are so limited. Don't we know that by now after all this um the 2023 among other things was really the year where we started revisiting the whole quantum physics thing. And there was a book that came out by Labatut called When We Cease to Understand the World. Have you heard of that book? Have you read it?
I haven't. Tell me about it.
Well, it's all about he's a French guy, and all about how uh, and it's done in almost like really well researched, but they've kind of written like short stories about huge scientific achievements um, colliding in catastrophic ways with history, and almost all of them in this early part of the 20th century. Obviously, the nuclear bomb and World War One, mustard gas, Hitler, and stuff. It is fascinating what I learned from that book. I couldn't put it down. It was a New York Times notable book of the year. Um, and someone turned it on to me and said, Obama loves this book, right? And I go, well, Obama's got pretty good taste, Barack Obama. And so I started reading it and I go, oh, I just, I anyway, it's because it was
Really, it's so good to reference books. We can go back. So it's called When We Cease to Understand the World.
right. And one of the principal case studies that he does is Schrodinger,
Yeah.
and some other people, and how they did this deep dive post theory of relativity into physics, and they came up with these speculative theories about how the universe works and how matter and light and so forth work, that some were proven and others were kind of like, well, we're not there yet. Of course, I kind of think that, and maybe I'd like to know what you think about this, Jerry. When we die, then we know, right? I mean, it's like we become, all the light that we are.
Boom.
It's got to go somewhere, and I think we, at least I don't know what happens after we die. Nobody does, but I have to think. I'm so curious about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing. We talked about Tim Leary last time, and that was one of the things that he was sincerely excited about.
Yeah.
When he heard he was going to die, I'm so excited. It's like it's the big adventure. This is it. I get to go. Right.
No, that's a heavy topic indeed. In fact, you brought up Captain Beefheart last time, and it's like people rarely bring up that my major history. I was lucky. He called me 52 times in 1 year at the middle of the night, once a week. And it was an amazing time. And so his poem really nails the word matter. We are matter, the stars are matter, but it doesn't matter. What a poem. And then at the end of his life, and Zappa are both dying, and they're sort of talking to each other on the phone. And they both watch a PBS documentary on the Big Bang Theory. And Frank says, Don, what was before the Big Bang? And he goes, the big. So Talking about books, though, Robert,
Mhm.
McLuhan wrote Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, saying, "Artists dream awake." We all have this incredible, you know, power, all humans, to create scenarios in the middle of the night, imaginative. And then, not to sound elitist, but Joyce was teaching McLuhan that artists do this while they're awake too. They dream awake. Have dreams played a role in your creative process?
Oh, without question. Without question, the mind never stops. And then when you go to sleep, you are in such a relaxed state that your subconscious dilates, right? And just all this stuff comes in. If you can learn to, um, um, what is that word about where you're
Lucid dream?
lucid dreaming? Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
My old departed dear friend Dave Carter wrote all of his songs in the dream realm,
Wow.
and he's considered to be one of the most important songwriters of the last 50 years. And he and his process. I remember I cover several of his songs, and I asked him about one, and he said, "Oh yeah, that was like all my songs. It came in the dream realm. In fact, it came fully realized. What you hear on the in the song is exactly how it came in the dream." For people who don't know what lucid dreaming is, it's where are you're dreaming, and then you kind of step out of yourself and you go, "You're dreaming." So you can really do anything you want right here.
You sort of direct it. I sort of say it's like a daydreaming, and you
Right.
can go, "Well, I wanna return to that hillside with the flowers," and you direct it. In fact, back to Leary, he said, "If you learn how to lucid dream for those 6 or 7 minutes after you die, your body dies, you can direct your path a little."
Wow.
If you've practiced lucid dreaming skills. But,
Wow.
another, duality or binary that you brought up a lot, or no, we brought up the word like, how people always say like. And it's funny because Joyce took the word laughter and added an A and an S and turned it into laugh tears in Finnegan's Wake. It's simple change of a word. Like, I love that you brought up you like to make up words, nonsense words. So he sort
Right.
of that. He made up this nonsense word, but people don't realize he just added an S to laughter, and what it caused was it to be laugh tears, which is you laugh and then you cry. That's the human condition. But if you
Mhm.
take two letters, it spells as, which is like the word like, which is metaphor, which is all language is metaphoric. So the question is how and why do you use metaphor in your art? And I'll set it up with one more. This is McLuhan's key thing: is don't just take an aphorism and be enlightened by it. Take it and then reword it or change it or take it a
Mhm.
little farther. So
Yeah.
he took Browning's quote, "Our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is heaven for?" And he changed it to, "Our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is a metaphor?" Which is a
this is
joke. Yeah,
this is all about language and the wonderful English language,
yeah.
which is so rich and so full, and we can play with it. And it is incumbent upon artists to do that. And metaphor, simile. I was just editing a poem this week by a student, and she was, in poetry, and I'm no, you know, uh, big shakes as a poet, but I love poetry, and I'm constantly reading poetry. I mean, like, right here on my desk, I mean, I just reach for this and I read it aloud every day, and I've got books and books of poetry because it's all about language. And I said, you've got a declamatory, emotional, bald bear statement here that's very sincere and true, right? Now, what you do is you go through and just go wild with the similes,
Yeah.
because within those similes and metaphors, you create pictures. Because when we write, we're not just writing words; we're writing pictures.
Yeah.
And if you and I provided some examples of this, and I could in her response, I could hear her bristling. Well, okay, I'll try that, but I'm going to try to make it my own. And I go, absolutely, make
Yeah.
it your own, right? You know, but one of the people, which I think we talked about last time, Kate Braverman, was
Yeah.
an expert at this. She's a fantastic poet. The only reason she wrote fiction is because she couldn't get any money or get published as a poet, so she turned her poems into short stories and novels. And they're some of the most richest,
Yeah.
interesting, for that very reason that she doesn't just talk about opening a door. She talks about, grabbing the handle, and then the handle was there like a, something, and then the door opens and the sunlight was out there, but it was like every bird in the world was shouting at me, like,
Yeah.
as, and it writers, especially when they're first starting out, are so resistant to this because I think a part of it is that they fear that they're going to write purple prose, right?
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is, writing is list making.
Yes.
Whether you're writing poems or you're writing short stories, you're making a list. And so when I said to this writer, I said, don't just settle for the first thing, because one of the similes she came up with was a cliche, you know, and I said, you know, you gotta go. There's an exercise that I do when I do exercises in class. I avoid those because they can seem really competitive, right? And everyone, tries to outdo each other, But again, it can have a usefulness. And I say, come up with multiple ways to describe the moon, you know, or um, a glass of milk,
Yeah.
right? And you'd really be surprised how quickly your mental muscles respond to that. And then the next thing you know, you're Tom Waits. And
That's
every interview, and you can't help but just talk conversationally in that way. And he is a person that has the soul of a poet. There's I mean, he's such a big star, but people kind of forget that he definitely would be some, they say, what five people, living people, would you want to have over for dinner? Tom
yeah.
Waits,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
you know
I've had a few encounters with him. I've wanted to interview him for years. But anyways, this was really good because I wanted to ask you this question about poetry. Really articulate, Robert. Thank you so much. You are. Leo Bersani just died about a year ago. Lit crit. He studied Mallarmé, the symbolist poet, and he said about him, the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. Now, there's a
Mm.
few words there that are little, but you get the gist of it. What's your gist of that? And it's even could apply to writing in general. The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. Any
Mm.
thought on that line?
It's about digging deeper,
Yeah.
and remember we were talking about earlier in the conversation that it's hard work to be informed, right?
Yeah.
It's hard work to create, you
Yeah.
know, and people oftentimes, I have little bits of advice I give to songwriters, so they don't fall into those, um, those familiar,
Yeah.
like comfort chords. I think I used this in our last interview where it's like, no, I never pick up the instrument, when I'm writing a song until I've got it down as a recitable, memorized
Yeah.
poem. And once you do that and you recite it 100 times on a long, long walk, you know, um, then the melody begins to, suggest itself. Then you finally pick up your your guitar or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but if you compose the lyrics while you're holding your guitar or playing with, you go right to the comfort chords, and then everything starts sounding the same. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Well,
you know,
you brought up
it's
that word, the cliche. It's great because McLuhan wrote a book called From Cliche to Archetype. And it's sort of like this transforming. In major writer who was the transforming supreme, Lewis Carroll, said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
oh wow. Um, boy, that's a really good challenge. In 6 impossible things.
Well, just one, if you could name one. Like sometimes people go, no, I don't believe in impossible things. I want to be practical. Sometimes people go, yeah, I believe in impossible things all the time. Well, just name one. That's what I'm after.
Well, we are all so caught up in the political machinations of 2024. Very, very actively think in a fearless way, and I not only think impossible things before breakfast, but I have conversations while I'm reading and having coffee. People come in and drop by and say hi, and this happened twice in one morning. This thing where this older fellow, old friend of mine, his name is Jim. I call him Jimbo, and he comes in. He goes, "Oh, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Did you see the latest thing?" And I go, "No, we're not, Jimbo. We are not in a lot of trouble. And you know what?
Good.
You have to be completely fearless and laugh at this clown.
That
Okay?
is good.
And I recommend to everyone I see to just to not succumb to the fear.
Yeah.
That's an impossible thing.
There you
So-
go. Do not succumb. Now you're giving me all my best lines for my salon. Do not succumb to fear.
yeah.
It's beautiful. It's, Sun Ra got quoted in the New Yorker of all places. The impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change.
Aha.
Isn't
Yes,
that
yes.
beautiful?
There's and also, the holding two ideas in your head at one time. Do
Yeah.
not succumb to the fear. But the sign above the stage at Second City before you go on stage says "Follow the fear." You know,
Oh my God, that's good.
so there's this contradiction inherent in the fear. So you choose what you fear. You follow the fear, but then you cannot be so afraid that you don't laugh, right? And keep it and find delight, find joy, right? Don't be afraid to find joy,
Yeah.
right? I guess that's the best way to put it.
Don't be afraid to find joy. That's good too. Be afraid to find joy. Well, you brought up Second City. I've got to ask you, one of the people who kind of invented comedy improv was Viola Spolin.
Sure.
And she said, geez, I'm not getting my page to word it absolutely correctly, but she said an amazing thing about you have to like face the struggle, and if you don't, the audience knows that. What role has struggle played in your creative process?
Oh wow. Where do I begin? Um, it is.
Oh, here it is.
Ev-
Let me say it so I get it right.
okay.
If
Sure. Sure.
if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. Which
Right.
is really, there's a lot of flip to that, because you
Yeah.
don't want to go out there and show the audience you're struggling. But she's saying the audience wants to see you struggling.
Yeah, 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 and not out of any sadistic
Right.
intent, that they understand that if you're not struggling, the stakes aren't high enough,
Yes.
you know, and and so I'm very, very well versed in Viola Spolin's um, philosophies in her books and her reading. I've read so many books on improv. I was
Yeah.
trained at the Groundlings, and then I spent some time working as the musical director for Second City's Totally Looped. And then I was
Yeah.
in a show called Specific Hospital. So I have a big, big, strong improv background. And because I love writing and
Yeah.
improv is writing is improv and vice versa.
Yeah.
And the writers, when you're writing fiction, you have to be like Bartholomew and not know. He wrote a whole book called Not Knowing, you know. And when you go on stage, you really cannot be coming in prepared with as an improv player. You can't be pre-planning anything. That's death. When you do that, you have to surprise yourself
Yeah.
and discover, as the book says, something wonderful right away. Right? And um there's I mean, I so many of my Facebook friends are improv players. Rick Overton,
Yeah.
absolute masters of improv. Andy Goldberg, and I know many people who were in the Spolin Players. I know people that were in the committee. You
Yeah.
know, um, I knew people that uh, Gary Austin, who founded the Groundling Theater, is an
Yeah.
old music friend of mine. We did a lot of shows together, music shows, and I rubbed shoulders with master improvisers before they were famous,
Yeah.
and I'm really value that time in my life because I was playing catch up. I had Did I talk about this last time about why I went in to study improv at the Groundlings?
Go ahead. Yeah, I think you didn't cover it. So, and
Well,
Did you see the Del Close documentary? Yeah.
loved it,
Yeah.
loved it. In
Yeah.
fact, I think I watched it after our last interview. I think
Yeah.
it came up and I jumped on it. I mean, I
Yeah.
I absolutely adore you guys. If you see the Del Close documentary, I think it's on Hulu, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it is, but um, I in the '80s was I had a dream since I was a teenager to be an improvisational jazz guitarist.
Wow.
And I'm a pretty good guitar player. That's why I really love Zappa. And my dream was to be like Keith Jarrett, except on guitar, with the delicious textures of Kotke and the high tech virtuosity arpeggiated of Al Di Meola. And
Nice.
I got there. I mean, I got, I could do that, but the lyrical impulse to write, the love of language won out, and so I combined the two, and that's one of the reasons I wrote songs with Daryl Purpose because he's a fabulous guitar player,
Yeah.
and I could kind of keep up with him chops wise. But someone said to me, you should take some theatrical improv classes. You're in LA and the Growlings have a school and everything. And I could afford it. And so I went and I went to a couple of shows and I said, wow, okay, I get it. This is really something. Started taking the courses and studied with some really amazing teachers. And I took lots of notes. I think I was the only person that took notes. I still have them, because the tenets of improv are applicable to any creative process. It's about listening. It's
Yeah.
about reusing information. It's about not going for the joke. It's about having things happen organically. You
Yeah.
know, um, all those things, and about I studied with Cynthia Seghetti for years, as did Conan O'Brien. I was in class with Lisa Kudrow, and a lot of people. This is pre-Groundlings.
Yeah.
You would take Cynthia's class in order to audition for the Groundlings. And again, playing catch up. Even in Specific Hospital, I would say I was the weak link. You
Yeah.
know, but by the end, I was a little bit better. Now, even to this day, I fantasize about going back and, trying to be a part of the Groundlings show and going through and just trying to get in and to do that, or to get into a really high profile improv group. I would just love to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I miss it, and I admire the people that do it so much.
Yeah. Well, Robert, let's talk about this. Tell me one major element of your creativeness, the years you've been doing it in music, theater, all the places you've done your creativeness, one major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
Mm, interesting. Um, I would say that I started out wanting to be a singer-songwriter. I grew up in the 70s. All my heroes were Chapin, Croce, you know, um, guys like that, Townes Van Zandt. Uh, but the whole time that I was doing that, I was moonlighting as a short story writer and a devotee of reading short fiction. And I really got so caught up in that, so that by the time um, I was in my 30s and starting to try to get published, um, the two were kind of competing. And when I made my third album, I realized this is it. I have 3 albums I'm very happy with. They're very literary albums, you know? And there was a part of me the whole time saying, well, you can be a short story writer, but you better put that guitar away, right? But then I realized, no, the guitar is a feature, not a flaw, right?
Yeah.
And uh, so I started writing these companion songs to my short stories and vice versa. And so wound up landing right where I needed to be. And so this is probably a good time to kind of announce that since the last time we spoke, I was awarded a year-long residency at the main theater in Santa Clarita to do 6 Night of Narrative shows. I think I mentioned a Night of Narrative that I was, all story songs and
Yeah.
maybe a couple of short spoken word pieces. And the emphasis on narrative, nothing declamatory, nothing declarative, no navel gazing, no deep kind of ambiguous reflection, but just a story, right? And so I opened up for Dylan Brody at the Main in October for his spoken word show. He's a dear friend. And somehow through that, I wound up getting offered this Thursday night slot once every 2 months to come up there and just do a night of narrative.
Nice.
The main theater, have you been there? It's really nice. They don't,
I
they
haven't
don't,
been, but I congratulate you. What a great series.
the first one will be February 1st. It's tickets are very affordable, $20, and it's on Main Street in Newhall. And I just want to say, for anybody listening and thinking, well, I'd like to go see that, but boy, that seems really far away. It's not far away. You can get there even for the 7 p.m. show on a Thursday. You can get there pretty quickly if you just go up to 14 and get off at Newhall Road. It's right there,
Cool.
and I am beating the bushes back to trying to get people to come out and see this show, because I'm a human jukebox, that, right?
Yeah.
And I've co-written or written so many story songs. So I did 2 of these shows last year, one at the A-Frame in Sylmar and one at Boulevard Music in Culver City, and they both sold out.
Nice.
And I did some promotion, but this one I have to do a little bit more promotion to try to get people to come. And people are very excited. They're very enthusiastic about this idea of, oh, wow, man, I really got to come see this. But I'm telling people now, don't wait to see a show later in the year. Come now, because you may want to come back to see some of the other shows, because every show will be very different.
How cool is that? 6 of them. And this is Moshe Feldenkrais saying it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Okay. I've talked a lot about how I'm very prolific as a writer. I have many manuscripts. I have a really good agent and like 3 novels that are unpublished, a bunch of short story collections. But it's been frustrating because don't have a dead tree book that I can hold in my hand. And that's my one thing. So what I wound up doing is I wrote a novel called Thrust Fault that I finished in December and handed it off to my agent. And so what I did was I took this inability to get a book of my own published and turn it into, I think, the best novel I've written. Good. It's about a short story writer who can't get published, and it's set about 10 years in the future. And it's filled with his little microfictions throughout. And all of the breakthroughs I had in that novel came organically as I was kind of struggling with this and really fighting, Gary, not to make it a white grievance novel, right? Yeah. In fact, this is the thing. It's like, the main character, there's a lot of reasons he can't get a book published. One of them is global warming. There's just not enough trees to make books, in this world set just slightly in the future. And so, but I approached it using the most powerful weapon in my quiver, which was humor. So it's a real funny novel, and people that have read it say it's laugh out loud funny, and then some of the very brief microfictions from the book I will be reading occasionally in the Night of Narrative shows.
How cool is that? So fill in the blank, Robert. Anger can be a productive emotion when
the person who is angry realizes that it's about fear.
Yeah. Amazing.
Oh, I want to say one other thing about the deficit, turning it into
a breakdown, a weakness into a strength, please.
Weakness into a strength, right? In my training as a writer, one of the things I was taught was that every main character has a misbehavior, right? An active misbehavior. The best misbehaviors are not internalized. They are active, and they also have the hidden power to redeem.
Yeah.
Those are the best, so I call them the quirk, the active quirk.
Yeah.
Right. And because misbehavior can sound so pejorative. Right.
Yeah. But that's, McLuhan said, how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough, or a rejection into a redirection, or I don't know if it was Little Feat, but teenage nervous breakdown. It's not a nervous breakdown. It's a nervous breakthrough. Or it's not a midlife crises. It's a midlife climax.
Yeah. Listen, you have to channel your inner Ruth Gordon.
That is good.
In Harold and Maude.
Inner Ruth Gordon, that is good.
Where it's like, or Gene Wilder in Stir Crazy, where it's just like, where every problem is an opportunity.
That's right? It. That's very good. Well,
so when people get rejections, my writers, they get rejections, and I go, you got a rejection? You got actual response?
You're lucky.
Right? You're lucky, And I said, hey, and if you got a rejection and it says it's got like a personal note in there or whatever, you better send off a little thank you to that editor for taking the time.
Take the time.
The door's now open. The door is open. That's how an editor opens a door to you, right?
That's McLuhan said, you can't prove you're sane unless you have discharge papers from a mental hospital. And my friend goes, I have them and they're framed. They're on my wall. See, I'm sane. That's proof right there. There's the discharge paper. So you sort of anticipated this. You got ESP. You create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait morphed it into you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So, Robert, tell me your thoughts on that. You create what you resist. I'm not saying you, but one creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's this self-contradiction, and sometimes it can be, it can manifest itself in a really low way. You see this in politics. They say that every time the former guy accuses somebody of something, it's because it's something he's done. Right? He's confessing out loud to something he's already done. Right? But one does have to realize that there is a thing they call it creative tension.
Creative tension, yeah.
Creative tension. And sometimes people, a good example of this is the end of a short story. At the end of a short story, novice writers and novice readers of short stories will complain that the ending is unresolved. It's they are expecting everything to be tied up in a little bow, right? And that's not how a short story works. A short story is open-ended. At the end of the story, the writer hands off the engine of narration to the reader and says, okay, now you come up with an ending based on the clues I put in this story, right? And I love that. That's why I love short stories, because that you have that power. And I think we talked last time even about, prior to Chekhov, all short stories were morality tales that did end up in and they were kind of driven by religion, right? And they had this little resolution, and Chekhov says, no, not so fast. I don't think so.
Yeah.
And he was a cheeky guy and hilarious.
Cheeky. Cheeky Chekhov.
Cheeky Chekhov, yeah. I mean, Chekhov is Russian for cheeky.
Oh, is it really? Cheeky.
But
Robert, you really nailed this. You sorry to interrupt, but you nailed exactly what McLuhan starts his first book, Mechanical Bride, describing how the sensory overload we're living in, we're swirling around in it. We can use it to swoop our way out ourselves and educate, as your key word is, knowledge is power, to find critical thinking skills. And it's Edgar Allan Poe's Descent into the Maelstrom short story, which is basically him inventing the detective novel. In the long run, he invents the detective novel. Like, I'm not going to tell you everything. You're going to go, oh, I know what's going to happen next. I'm going to swoop you into the creative experience. It's called reasoning backwards. And what McLuhan called it was effects precede causes.
Yeah.
That's what effects precede causes. So you really described effects precede causes so well, saying I'm handing the engine of the narrative off. Thank you.
Yeah. Chekhov and Kafka both, despite their lugubrious portraits, you see the pictures of them.
Yeah,
their serious portraits were, really huge pranksters and jokesters.
Yeah.
Kafka, when he read his short stories, his immediate audience was his buddies, who would be rolling on the floor laughing, at some of
Yeah.
these things. You could just imagine, in the penal colony, and Kafka reading it with his, kind of trademark deadpan way, and and his friends incapacitated with laughter. When they did that, he knew that he had succeeded.
Yeah.
And people kind of forget, um, Dylan, Elvis Costello, there's a large case to be made that they are humorists.
Oh God, Dylan's a major. It's called the compassionate trickster. The
Yes.
the coyote. In fact, you know who nailed it the best was McLuhan calling Joyce. He said Joyce uses the pun as a way of seeing the paradoxical exuberance of being through language.
Right.
That's what you really reckon. You helped me realize Chekhov and Kafka, where they were using the joke, the pun, humor as a way of seeing this paradox, exuberance of being through language. Okay, Robert, what's the most
One last thing about that.
significant?
MacArthur genius and amazing poet Lewis Hyde.
Yes, he's got
He
that great book on it.
he
Yeah.
wrote "Trickster Makes the World."
Yes, that's a great book.
Which is such an important, um, book by him, and
Very, very good.
he's a really cool guy.
Now that is a really good point. And the other person I suggest is Carolyn Casey. She's been on KPFK and Pacifica for 20 years, and she's her Coyote Network News. She says compassionate trickster. And so, what's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Is that women, the female abilities for leadership remain untapped in terms of just the world. We need to bring women into leadership roles, especially women of color. It can only help us. That's the big difference. That I joke in my book, about, my character's kind of a victim of this, screw the patriarchy kind of thing, but he hates that. He hates that he just is not a victim. I'm not a victim. I just want to get a book published. That's all. Women should run everything. You're right.
Yeah.
So he is totally on board with the common sense of it. And anyway, the misogyny that we're seeing right now on the political spectrum, that's the big difference, is that most men fail to realize just how special women are.
Yeah.
And they retreat into this kind of fear thing.
Yeah.
Women, on the other hand, women are pretty tough. Women are, they have a certain amount of fearlessness. Everybody's different, and it's hard to generalize.
Yeah.
About that. But I think that humility, that's the big thing. That's the big difference between them. Humility, right?
That's a great word.
And, true magical humility, right? Effective humility is earned.
Yeah.
Right. And if you've paid your dues, right, as a people, as a sex, as a race or a tribe or whatever, there's a certain amount of humility that comes with that is invaluable. Gen Z, we talked about last time, is, one of their traits is they're not loudmouths. That's why they're gonna run the board in November. Women and Gen Z are going to run the board. We are not ready yet for what the change that is going to come.
Yeah. Boy, I love your hope and positiveness. And these are 5 Alan Watts questions off the top of your head in just a couple words. 1, who started it all?
Who started it all? Whitman.
Very good. 2, are we going to make it?
Yes.
3, where do we put it?
Into the hands of the poor.
Oh my God, that is beautiful. Who's cleaning it up?
Our grandchildren, which is why we should pay attention.
5, is it serious?
Yes.
Very good. Zappa said, I'm very serious about being not serious, but I got to tell you, into the hands of the poor was such a great answer because, you know, the whole controversy of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, how they charge the guys $10,000 to all their bandmates to come and participate. And it's got a lot of controversy, but look at anybody saying, let's salute other people in our genre or medium is, I like that in a way, but Iggy got up there and he says, you know, in front of all the white dudes with ponytails like this, all the industry ponytail guys, and he says, I'm for all the poor people who started rock and roll. And
Right.
it was such a great, and they're all like, right on, brother, you know, but it is an amazing thing. What you said, hands of the poor, that is such a beautiful statement. It is really, you know, inspiring. So, Robert, how do you find peace of mind?
Naps.
Oh, I like that. I'm for that.
Yeah. I turn this thing off.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, we lost Melanie this week.
I know. Oh my God.
So I happened on the day she passed, I did a show at Kulak's Woodshed in North to
Yeah.
benefit the Far West Folk Lands, and one of the songs that I played, the song I opened with, was "What Have They Done? Look What They've Done to My Song."
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of fumbled on the French part. You know, I thought I had it down, but there's a lot of things in that song that that are really like. There's one line in there. Wish I could find a good book to live in.
Wow. I need that.
You know,
Beautiful.
and I just so identified with that. That was the easiest line to ever sing. You know, she was really an amazing
What a great
artist.
line.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful. So, if you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
It does nothing but get better.
Beautiful. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Oh, what a good question.
Thank you.
I'm really kind of drawing a blank. Maybe I'll come back to that one. But no. First thought, best thought. Let's see. Uh, This is my biography. You're saying
Autobiography. You wrote a book about
my autobiography.
the book of Robert Morgan Fisher's autobiography.
I'm embarrassed to write this.
Oh, that's good. If they want to scent the glue in the binding, what smell?
Peppermint.
Very good. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
At the bottom of the Marianas Trench in paper mache. I'm
Paper
not a
mache.
big I'm not a big believer in statues, man.
Yeah. Um, tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Huh. To fly first class.
That is a great practical answer. To fly first class. Very good.
All the interesting stuff happens in coach, Jerry.
Hello.
Yeah.
If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do? I'm glad you're laughing, Robert. This was supposed to be fun.
I'd say this again.
That is a great answer. This again. I wish you could have met the guy who turned me on to that. He was an altar talker. He sat on the boardwalk in Venice Beach. He had such an amazing life, but he just, married many years, had kids. But at the end of his life, he just wanted to sit on the boardwalk and watch people walk by, And he taught me that question. And in a way, it's sort of like the metaphor for life. You're in a bad vomit, people throw bags of shit at your house. This again? Wow.
I was thinking of the Sam. Who's the beast? The stand-up Sam.
Sam Kinison.
Sam Kinison. He
Yeah.
has the whole bit about necrophilia.
Yeah.
But just imagine, you've died, you're in the funeral parlor, and then someone comes in and it's like, what's going on? Oh, no, it never
ends. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Empathy.
Yeah. What a word.
Yeah, that's all Gen Z, man. This performative cruelty, that we're doing. It's so tired, and it diminishes us all. And the cruelty is the point, kind of thing. They're just so over that. Anyway.
I saw this video game programmer who's got really successful, David O'Reilly, give a big speech at a film festival, and he says, "Fuck storytelling, it's all empathy." And I just loved him putting that word over storytelling, because his big video game that made it splash was a mountain, and that's all it is. It's just a mountain floating. Wow. So tell me a question, Robert, that remains unresolved for you.
It's hard to, the first thing that comes to mind is something about, my own dreams and goals and visions. And it's just, that seems so solipsistic, and selfish, but the one thing is that for me, the unresolved question artistically for me is, when am I going to get a book published?
That's
and it's like, sorry, man, that, there are a lot of lofty, big picture, macro, unresolved questions, but those are kind of, easy. And, and I'm being here now. And, right now I just going like, it would really be nice to get a book published, right? So
tell me how these three main things in your life, your callings, have shaped your behavior? Writing, music, and teaching. First,
Mm.
writing. How has writing shaped your behavior?
Um, well, first of all, it's made me so grateful, for books and authors, and just to have that, you know, it has made me, um, it has made me appreciate language and not just the English language. You know, when I'm reading, if I've got two conversations going on each side of me and somebody's jabbering in Turkish and the other person's jabbering in Spanish and stuff, I love that.
Yeah,
Because I go on like, wow, those are foreign words. I don't know, I recognize some of them, right? But I mean, the fact that people can have these extended conversations, and some of them can get quite in depth and serious and sophisticated. You know, that's amazing that we just have so many languages
it's
in the
amazing.
world.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah, and I,
Yeah,
I don't
that's
I don't I don't fear that. I love the English language. But when I read a book by Roberto Bolaño or someone that's been translated, I do a little research on the translator and just go, wow, what was that
yeah,
experience like? You know,
exactly. It's a
um,
key
and and
word.
and and you asked about the other two things, music and
Yeah,
teaching.
yeah. The one thing I wanted to tell you is one of the key words that I've enjoyed you bringing up constantly over these two parts is language. It's
Hmm.
the tool we're using. In just an anecdote, there's over 60 languages in Finnegan's Wake. So that is the morphing of all of them. So you can't translate it. It got translated into Chinese a couple years ago and it was a bestseller. And it was like, first of all, you can't translate it. You can try to, but it's an amazing thing how you morph all the language because it's really language about language, which is what
Right,
you're sort of caught up with in all your art forms is you're not just providing content, you're understanding here's what language is, here's its
right.
form, its many forms. So the other two
Well,
was how is
I just want to say something about that, and that is that you and I both agree, that Michael Silverblatt is the Godhead, and
yeah,
he's
I love
he
that.
was the first person that just really kind of, said it enough times to where I just kind of stood up and noticed, and he goes, "Michael's right. It is all
That's
about
it.
language and how
And I have
and
I have notes on my page to my friend knows Michael. She went to school with them years ago. And I'm gonna email her and say, when did you last hear from him and how's he doing? You know,
and let me know,
because
will you?
yeah, I will. I will. It was really beautiful how we gave that salute to him last time.
Yeah,
And we're giving him a double salute now. So
right
then
on.
the other two, music and teaching. How has music shaped your behavior and how has teaching shaped your behavior?
Because there's this word earworms. You get
Yeah,
these earworms go through your head, and if
yeah.
you are invested in music and love music, you listen to it, you think about it a lot. There's a soundtrack running through your head all the time. It can be a problem if you're trying to meditate, and just to sort of detach from that for a little bit. It can be a little tricky for a musician. So that's one thing. That's it has shaped my behavior that I am curious about just all forms of music, you know,
Yeah.
and when I see people really, really responding to like say a really profane rap song, I go, wow, man, what that says a lot about them, and I'm not
Yeah.
being judgmental. I'm just saying I find that interesting, you know. Teaching, when I'm doing music and I'm writing, I like to think that I'm teaching.
Oh, how
Not
cool.
Yeah, not in a pedantic way.
Yeah.
Um, Also, it's a two-way street. the audience and my students are teaching me as well.
Yeah.
And it's a two-way thing. So I I value learning so much, and education and knowledge for knowledge's sake. This anti-college thing that some people are on, like, Bill Maher, he can sometimes hit it right out of the park, but there are a couple of axes that he grinds and I'm going like, Bill, yeah, it isn't, we need more plumbers. Okay. It's kind of a thing, not everybody needs to go to college. Yeah, but you know what? Knowledge for knowledge's sake is a good thing. And
Yeah.
informed people are happier, right? And when you take away that and ban books or whatever, not that Bill Maher is a book banner, he's against that. But the idea that you go, if you benefit by spending a couple of years at community college or state college or whatever. I think the big reason that people like Bill Maher are so anti higher education right now is because it's a completely corrupt enterprise.
Yeah.
In terms of the cost of it, you know, it should be free. I'm with Bernie. You know, um,
Hello.
if you wanna make sure that we don't have more January 6th, things or shootings and stuff, throw a little education at people. Give them a good book. Expose them to art and ideas.
Yeah.
You're getting back to your thing. Can art stop the killing? Yes, it can. You know,
Hello. And
yeah,
I interviewed a great artist in LA and a teacher, and she said it's reciprocal. Your word. It's like teaching is a reciprocal thing. I'm the student
right.
as well as they're the student, they're the teacher. I'm two more when we're out of here, Robert. Really been a delight and I'm so enlightening. This is Thornton Wilder in 1928. Art is confession, art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for many hours. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
I think what Thornton is referring to, wonderful writer, by the way, is putting it between the lines,
Yeah,
right? And that's the art of the thing, right? When you provide clues without being cagey or coy or confusing, right? And so I love never heard that quote from him, and
it's
I
amazing.
love that you are sharing it with me. Um, what is it again exactly?
It's
Art and
amazing. Robert, one thing just to compliment you, you're a great talker, but you're also a great listener. And very, very rarely people really try to isolate that. They jump off because the question's kind of weird. It's insinuating, well, you've held a secret back. Tell me. I used to ask it like this. What's a secret you can reveal to me right now? But I changed it to what's it really all about? And there you go. Well, what do you mean by it? And so it is open ended. Art is confession, art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time.
okay, yeah. One other aspect of that is when you write a short story, the first thing many people say is, "Did that really happen?" Right? And the correct answer is, "I'll never tell," or "My experiences inform and influence, but it's fiction." Yeah, everything is fiction, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, the person who would probably inspired that story would say, "I don't know how you can call that fiction," right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not. I'm definitely. Um, I'm on. I am keeping myself in check and making sure that I don't succumb to my own, hyperbole, right?
Yeah.
But that's why the autobiographical question, the autobiography question, kind of threw me a little bit because the
Yeah.
last thing in the world people say, God, you've led such an interesting life. You met so many people. You should
Yeah,
write a memoir. And I go, no, absolutely not. Never, never. That will
yeah,
never happen. Right.
yeah,
And part of it is that whole thing that Neil Young talks about. You got to have some mystique. Right.
yeah,
That's part of it. But also, it's like, I leave that to the academicians and the academics and the the gossips and the readers, right? I want them to wonder, right?
yeah,
And that is me handing the narrative off to them
yeah.
at the end, right?
How cool.
Because
That's
you know what, they'll probably, in just imagining, probably get it more correct than I would with my own words. I can't be
amazing.
trusted. I can't be trusted. We can't be trusted to tell our own stories sometimes,
That
right?
is so
Right?
who's better to write? That's like Philip Roth controlling the guy who wrote the book about him and all these people. That's
Yeah,
like, wait a minute. We know that this, there's so many books. Like, I've studied Zappa for so many years, and there's tons of books about him, and it's great stuff. And I'm never going to write a book about Frank. I said there are way too many books, but I will talk about it. And one thing he said is an amazing song. He says, "You don't want to know what's behind my eyes." Like, you don't
that's
want
right.
to know that's a heavy thing, because, well, why? You don't want to know it. I've already revealed it to you through all my songs and everything I'm singing about and talking about, but you don't want to know what's behind my eyes. That's an enticing little probe, like, well, maybe I do. And then
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
the other thing you touched on was so beautiful was Faulkner saying sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yes, absolutely. I don't believe that there is a boundary between. I think it's all fiction. I've
Yeah,
said this before, you know.
yeah,
And getting back to what you said about Zappa, right?
yeah,
Dylan also has that incredible line in maybe my most favorite song of his
yeah,
is "It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only
yeah,
Bleeding," right?
yeah,
Um, if my thought dreams could be seen, they'd
yeah.
probably put my head in a guillotine.
It's exactly Frank and Bob. I made a film about when Bob came to Frank's house to get him to produce an album. Do you know that story?
No.
It, it's mind blowing. I'll send you the film. It's like a 3-minute film that tells the story, and there's so much crossover. And Dylan,
Wow.
after I made the film, Dylan said in the Wall Street Urinal that he thought Zappa was really great and ahead of his time and blah blah blah. He praised Frank, but it's all fiction. It's amazing. Okay, so we'll end with this one, but I hope this never ends, Robert. We can keep talking. Um, what gives you the most optimism?
Hmm. Knowing that it could always be worse. That's
Oh,
something
wow.
my mother gave me. She would always say, it could always be worse, you know,
Yeah,
and that's so there, that's such a good thing to take into any situation, right?
yeah,
Is that indefatigable optimism, even though my mom, she had her dark Lincoln-esque moments, her life was not easy, uh, at times, but she taught me how to celebrate e- everything. If you, there's a everything can be celebrated,
yes.
right? And I don't know if anybody famous ever said that everything can be celebrated.
It's a great,
Yeah,
it's a mantra.
yeah, I mean it's a very Buddhist thing, right?
Yeah,
The point is the suffering, right? So I just feel fortunate to have, even when it's misfortune hits and stuff, it's like, wow, there was someone had a um a meme that I copied down. Let's see here. it's maybe I didn't copy it down, but I saw it yesterday and I just absolutely loved it. But the whole idea was that, when you die, right, you want your body to be, I'm paraphrasing here, you want your body to be bruised and battered so you can say, man, what a ride.
What a ride.
What a ride, it's like these scars, they're badges of honor, whether they're
Yes.
emotional or plainly physical, right? It's just like, wow, what a ride. Respect,
What a
for
ride.
someone
And
who's
Robert,
kind of been through that.
you also evoked Dr. Seuss saying, don't be sad it's over. Be happy that it happened.
There you
In movie, that is really well. Like Frank nailed it too. Frank Zappa said, don't stop and keep going,
Yeah, right.
So
All right.
Robert Morgan Fisher, what a great name too, by the way. Not only you're a great wordsmith and great human, your name is so fucking cool. Robert Morgan Fisher. Come on, it is cool. So the first question I asked you in part one was, what's the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich says the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you. Thank you so much, Robert. Truly
Thank you,
enlightening.
Gary.
Most of all, it was fun. Fun is the key.
Honored
Fun.
to be here.
Yeah.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends for real. And I hope we can keep talking forever and ever.
We'll get together soon. Let me know about Michael Silverback, will you?
I will. Thank you so much, Robert.
Okay. Love you, man.